We're typically going to have sorry, I seem to be out of breath. I don't know why. We'll typically have the air on in here, and I'll no doubt have that on right as when the first person comes in and starts. That'll be going. On this one, the big air system is just this. So it's not anything else you have to hook up. It's just a little vacuum bag on the back. Okay, so we don't have to turn any other vacuum air thing on for this guy. So this is a chop saw, and it's used typically to make rather short cuts on a long board. It is typically unplugged, so we're going to need to plug it in, and normally, I think you saw me yesterday plug that vacuum in here, so we have to just exchange it with this. I don't want to do that first, though. What I want to do first is adjust the saw to the kind of cut that I'm going to make. One of the things that's kind of confusing on this, I think, is just simply, well, how do you get this to come up? You know, so you guys over here might need to peek around the corner because it's not well marked. It's not an easy thing to see. So there's a little button back here that you pull out. So come over here for a minute. I'll stand on this side. So it's this little button here, and obviously it's not well marked. It's not in any color. There's nothing about it that seems special. But you can't pull the saw up until you pull that out. Now this will come up. When you finish with it, you do want to bring it down and push that guy in. Okay? So we've got it up. Now in terms of cutting this, I prefer that you not cut anything, let's see, shorter than, I'll show you one. Let's see. There's some different lengths. So any of these, when I put them in here, I can hold it and have my hand out of the way, and it's supported back here, right? So I'm good with that length. And anything longer. How about this one? This one, get a little closer. This one is really short. And honestly, I think this is the minimum. So maybe the length of your hand. If it is shorter than that, ask me and we'll figure out a way to do it, okay? We might just cut it by hand. We don't have to cut everything by power saw. But shorter than this, what happens is, let's see, I'll go this direction. There's a gap in here. And so there's no support there. Potentially that can twist, pull your hand in, that'd be a worst case scenario. But more than likely, you're not going to get an accurate cut, is what's going to happen. So that's why the length of this, not shorter than that. Okay? More than likely, it's something longer, like this kind of length or longer. It can't be wider than when this blade comes down. It can't be wider. Well, the blade comes down right there. So it can't be a wider board than that. So maybe that short piece I had here, that's almost at the limit of. So if I tried to cut this way, it's not going to cut all the way through, right? Because this is longer or further away from the fence than the blade's able to cut, and I can't pull the saw this way. It just goes up and down. Okay, so now I would have a similar approach to cutting this as I was talking about on the table saw. I'd have a line on there, and I want to bring this down and look at it so that typically the good part, the part that I want to keep, is on this side, but not always. So whichever is the side you want to keep, you want to cut on the waist side of the pencil line and hopefully leave a little bit. So as you get really good, that's your goal, is to leave like half the pencil line still there, okay? Now, I said that sometimes it might be, well, this is the good part that I want to keep rather than this. And the reason for that is that maybe I only want to cut off, I want to cut several pieces the same length. So if I wanted to cut several pieces this length, what I would do is put this down, push the button in so it doesn't move, and push this piece, since that's the length I want, right up next to the saw. Now what I'm going to do is take a clamp. So this type of clamp, there's several types of clamps over there on that rack. There's a couple of these, and the way they work is with both handles twisting open and shut. You want to, whenever you use this, whether it's on the saw or on anything else, you want these two pieces here to be parallel as they close together. You don't want that, okay? So the idea is to tighten them evenly together. In this case, what I'm going to do is use the clamp to create essentially what we might call a jig. So I'm tightening both handles here, right up next to this. That's the length I want. So now I can bring this up. And now when I push this board up, it's going to come up to that spot as a stop, and I can cut several pieces that same length. So in this case, the piece I want to keep is on that side of the saw. Now, let's say I'm not trying to cut several pieces the same length. I'm only trying to shorten this one, and that's the most normal case. Then I'm going to, the piece I'm keeping is over here, and I've drawn a pencil line on it again, and I'm trying to cut half that pencil line, okay? So let's do both. I'll push this up to the stop, and holding it there. So now I'm ready to cut. I've set it up, I'm good to go. So at this point is when I'm going to plug it in. So I plug it. Okay. And to make the saw work, I'm gonna do it now just for a sec. You'll hear it. Okay, so I'm squeezing up here. That's where the trigger is. It's not a, this is an exception to what I told you the other day. I think I said on all the machines there's a red and a green button. That's not true here. It's just an on and off trigger. Okay. So let's see, what else do I need to tell you? I think that's good. So I'm going to use this stop part. Hold it up here so it's snug against the fence. Pull this and bring it down. And so when I let off the trigger, it shuts off by itself. So now I have another piece that's the same length as the one that I used as my guide, and there that is. Now, if I, sorry, I didn't bring this over. I'm going to cut off an end of this, or I'm shortening this board. I'm going to start out with having a line on it. So again, I'll use a square, and let's say I want it to that length. I'm pulling it in here, and I'm going to bring the saw down first and kind of push it into the wood just a little bit to see where that is. So I think it needs to be right there. So now I'm raising it up. Don't turn the saw on when you have the blade resting on the wood. That's kind of a key thing, right? So up here, that's where I turn it on. Cut it. And there is, actually, that's pretty darn good, actually. There's just a tiny, tiny little bit of the pencil line left. And I doubt if you can see that from a distance, but that's the goal, is to do that. Let's see, what else do I do? Oh, maybe I don't want a straight cut. This way I want an angled cut. So to move the saw, what I want to do under here, and you guys may scoot this way a little bit to see this one. It's another hidden little button. there's two on the end. There's this knob here that I turn to loosen it or unlock it, but I still can't move this table. So underneath it, there's a little lever. So yeah, peek around the corner so you can see what I'm moving. So I've loosened this to unlock it. Maybe you guys that have seen it scoot so that they can see. I know it seems kind of like, yeah, I get it, but I do want you to see it, okay? So it's this under here. I'm just lifting that lever with my finger, and when I lift it, I can now turn the saw. So and a typical angle that I might want would be a 45-degree angle. So and I go this way to 45, and now it's gonna cut across the wood this way. And if I go over here, I can cut it that direction at 45 degrees. So let's do this one. So I have it over there, I've moved it, and I can read on here the degrees that it's going to cut at 45. And I can just tighten it down now. And then the same thing, I'm holding this up next to the fence, and so now I have a 45-degree cut that direction. The difference, of course, is not only the way you want it to go, but notice when I have it this way, the saw is coming down really, really close to my hand now, this way. So it's to your advantage to always mark it so that you're cutting it away from you rather than towards you. There are times when you can't do that, right? But many times we have that choice. So all you need to do is rotate it so it's at that angle rather than this angle. We have many other stops in here, not just for 45 degrees, but 45 is the most common. Okay? Before we move on, anyone that has used a chop saw before, is there something else that comes to mind that would be good to pass along? How many of you used some kind of chop saw? A couple of you have. Very good. Okay. Then I believe that's the majority. I guess what I need to do, many times we end up with a bunch of little pieces like this over here. And I moved the trash can back over where it normally is located. So, you know, just kind of, just at the basic, clean that up. And we want to put, if you used a clamp, then that's going to go back over here. And so here's another one I can get over here. Okay? Pieces that are like this long or longer, you know, that can go, and I need to reorganize this over here, obviously. But typically we can keep these, you know, they can get used for all sorts of things. But smaller than this, they can go away. All right, I think that's the wonderful world of the chop saw. So the next thing we're going to do is look at this sander.